So, tips for your heavy tanks, your brawlers, your bruisers, your bastions of fortitude. Hi, I'm Steve Wallace. I'm very good at driving virtual tanks, of which my dad is very, very proud, and so allow me to give you some tips that from the 50B to the mouse will allow you to improve and reform your heavy tank gameplay. Stay alive. I see many people playing heavies who play the same on 100 HP as they did on 2000. Why? You're up front, you're fighting, that's great, but the moment you get to very low HP in a heavy, you are now defensive support. Keep yourself safe. Keep yourself in the game, in contention. There's a great example you're watching now in my Tiger 1. You are infinitely more valuable alive and doing nothing than you are dead and unable to do anything. Being alive makes the enemy think about another tank, about another angle, about one less shell in their autoloader. If you find yourself on a one-shot, rage against the dying of the light. Occasionally, in War of the Tanks, you'll find yourself confronted by an adversary in a one-on-one engagement. Now, of course, this happens in every single vehicle, but this principle is particularly prevalent in heavy tanks because they often flirt with a lack of mobility. So let's say I'm fighting this opponent one-on-one and I get off a good shot of damage. Now, because it's a one-on-one fight, we're both isolated, neither of us have any support, that opponent is going to come around seeking that free shot of damage into you in response. Now, I'll play this clip as most people respond to this situation, and then we'll look at how I respond. Now, me. Now, the difference here involves the use of downtime. Downtime in War of the Tanks refers to any period in which you cannot actively deal damage to the enemy. You can use downtime to relocate on your position, gain awareness, or even pretend that you're not reloading in an autoloader. Let's look at this first example here. This fine mysterious gentleman gets a shot into the enemy IS and then starts reversing away because he knows his enemy can safely come round for a shot. It's good awareness of what is going to happen. However, the only thing that you accomplish by doing this is distancing yourself from the enemy, which means you're going to be unable to fire the next time your gun is loaded. There's essentially a good few seconds here where I lose the shot, where I'm not firing as soon as I've loaded, which in a close one-on-one fight can absolutely be the difference between winning and losing. Instead, what you should do is the second example. When I get the shot off, I know my opponent is going to come around for that retaliatory shot. However, while I'm angling as best I can, trying to mitigate damage, I stay in close enough proximity that I know as soon as my gun is loaded, I can be firing. I can be making sure that my DPM is as high as it can be, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to matter, and that's what's going to help you win those one-on-one fights that can really spell the difference between winning and losing in War of the Tanks. Lock off your turret. Your right mouse button is your friend. If you didn't know, holding the right mouse button will lock off your turret pointing where it is. This enables you to zoom out, gain perspective, be aware of your surroundings without disrupting your aim at the enemy. This should also be utilised when moving from flank to flank, to point your thicker armour towards the most likely direction of enemy fire. In addition, it's especially important in autoloaders to keep your turret facing the opponent when you are reloading. Seeing someone do this in a T-57 Heavy is as good as having the commander jump out of the turret and start screaming, "Hey! I just wanted everyone to know that I'm reloading!" Just start doing it. Talented vehicles in the game and Swedish TDs in siege mode have a useful ability, which is that they can aim in sniper mode at a different spot to where they are actually pointing the gun, 360 degrees around the tank. What this enables you to do is in one of those situations where you have an annoying little bitch skulking about on the sides, poking out whenever you look at something else, you can aim your turret at something else, but then in sniper mode, you aim right at that corner. Now, when he pops out from his point of view, it's gonna look as if you're completely distracted. But what doing this does is it cuts out that 1 or 2 seconds that you would normally need to see him, scope in, and then move to aim. Instead, the second he pokes out, you can swing the tank and the turret right around and let off a shot. And that little misdirection is often enough to pick up shots and kills that would otherwise elude you. There are very few vehicles in the game on which you should use improved hardening over modified configuration. People favour hardening because the benefits are legibly tangible. Right, you can literally see the benefit. However, the assets provided by modified config eclipse hardening in the vast majority of games. But when pair speed is better, it improves the HP of your modules by 150% in the survivability slot, it mitigates penalties if you do get damaged, and it reduces the fire chance by 65%. In addition, remember, it completely eliminates the destruction of an Amarak engine fuel tank the first time it happens in battle. What this means is that if you are running modified config, the chance of getting set on fire is so vanishingly small. Remember, the fuel tanks have a bonus 150% to HP and a minus 65% chance to fire on top of that, and a chance to not get set on fire even if they do get damaged. What this means is that you can land another small or large repair kit or premium consumable every single game without a care in the world. The subtle but potent improvement in functionality and maintenance ability of your vehicle will end up being far more prevalent in the vast majority of your gameplay than the additional modicum of health and other benefits you get from improved hardening. I thoroughly believe that modified config is a better choice of equipment in the vast majority of circumstances. Some of us are addicted to achievement, dedicated to it. We have a goal in mind and we set out to achieve it. Now, while I believe that for most players, playing a lot of games of World of Tanks around tiers 5 to 8 is a very wise decision, something that may help those in a rush up to tier 10 is improved hardening. I know I just bashed improved hardening, but one thing it provides that modified config doesn't is improved suspension capacity. What this means is, if you really can't be bothered to research the suspension of a particular vehicle, you can instead mount improved hardening, and this will allow you to mount any and all modules and equipment on a tank without ever having to research the suspension. Alpha damage ties in very heavily to how you undertake an engagement. Let's take the mouse. Let's say I'm fighting a T110E4. Currently, I'm going to mitigate his shell with the angle that I have, but I'm not willing to go for a shot on him. Not just because in the mouse and a few other heavies pointing your turret directly at the opponent exposes weak spots, but it's because of the alpha damage. The mouse does 490, the T110E4 720.
You're a dumbass. You're a dumbass.
So assuming we both pen every shell, it favours the opponent. However, let's replace the T110E4 with the Object 140. Now it's 320 damage that I'm facing. Now it's worth the trade. I have more alpha damage and more hit points. If we can trade 1 for 1, I will win. So against enemies that you outmatch with alpha damage and hit points, it's often absolutely worth risking taking that damage to just assert yourself, using your hit points as a tool and working that enemy tank down. Know your tank. Tanks.gg, linked in the description, is a fantastic site for getting up to grips with all of these statistics and the armor profile of a vehicle. Before you jump into battle in any tank, look at this site, look at the statistics, look at the armor. Knowing the weaknesses of your vehicle is one of the best steps to take to improve at the game, because when you play more and more tanks, if you know how to beat your tank, you can beat opponents on the battlefield when they play that same tank. And it's far easier, right? It's far easier to learn your own vehicles than it is to learn the myriad of other tanks that you're going to face. Every single time you play, you should have tanks.gg open on another window. Install Battle Hits. Battle Hits is a modification that gives you a visual representation of the shots fired by you and at you in-game. You can use it to examine unusual penetrations or bounces that you don't understand, and when used in conjunction with tanks.gg, it can better enhance your knowledge of the game. You can find this modification in our Honest Gaming mod pack, link in the description, or on the What Mods site, isolated from our mod pack, also linked in the description. Your HP is a tool. As a heavy tank, you have a certain weight of responsibility on your tracks, particularly when you are top tier. You're more or less obligated to assert yourself, to be up front, to pull your weight. However, the extent of that responsibility can very heavily depend on your team. For example, say you're in the midst of a burly brawl on X. You should have enough awareness to see what's going on the other flank. Now let's say our western flank starts to crumble. I now want to start upping the aggression, using my hit points, taking more risks, really trying to up the tempo, because even if I die, it's better to try and push out before it becomes futile due to being flanked. Now let's pull it back and let's say our western flank starts winning handily. Well, in that case, I'm going to start playing defensively, conserving my hit points, delaying the enemy, because I know two things. One, these enemy heavy tanks will be feeling great pressure soon due to the flank and pressure on their base. And two, they are in the exact same situation that I just explained. Their best recourse is to push, is to finish us off so that they can then go back and deal with the new threat. So, the more HP I have, the stronger I am. The more HP I can conserve, the harder it is for them to deal with me before they get flanked. So even in a powerful heavy, your gameplay should very much be impacted by the success or failure of your team. You are not a solo act. In a mouse, an E100, you may feel such an overwhelming sense of power that it feels like you're immortal. Rest assured, you are not. Big, powerful heavies like these have weaknesses that can be exploited, especially if you find yourself isolated. In most heavy tanks, you should be up front trying to get stuck in and pull your weight, but not so far removed from your network of support that you end up cutting off your own lifeline. Where you move in your heavies, particularly in endgame situations, depends on where your allies can provide you support. As you can see in these examples, many of these positions are objectively bad locations to put heavy tanks. But being in a bad position with support of your team is often better than being in a good position entirely alone. A useful technique for inexperienced players or people who find themselves dying way too easily by their estimation in heavy tanks is to take an alpha damage representative of the tier that you're playing and subtract that in your mind from your hit points. play as if you had that many less hit points. As well as helping you play a bit more conservatively, it gives you a lifeline and genuinely affects the enemy team's gameplay. People will play far differently against a tank on a 2-shot than against a tank on a 1-shot. So keeping those hit points as a reserve not only gives you a buffer zone for mistakes, but also means enemy tanks are less likely to come in and finish you off, allowing you to stay in the game and contribute further. Many heavy tanks within Water Tanks will have cupolas as weak spots, unless they don't. Generally, heavy tank hit point haggling is fought in close enough quarters that cupola shots are a viable method of killing the opponent. So a good habit to get into is being demoed by our lovely Ian here, wiggling the turret. Not only does it have a chance of blocking the enemy's shell with the gun, because the gun is an external module and can block shells, it also moves your cupola around unpredictably. This is a great way of making use of downtime during your reload, pointing your gun up, wiggling your turret. Makes it that much more difficult for the enemy to get a shot. Even if it only saves you an extra 2 seconds, 3 seconds before they can take that shell, it's still time that you are impacting on the enemy. It's time that you are taking away from their DPM because they are sat there not firing at you because you are making their shot harder. You are actively diminishing their effect on the game by delaying their capacity to take a shot. In addition, of course, you're reloading. Every second you can delay their shot is another second that you have to reload safely without letting them start their own reload. Cupola wiggling is essential. Do it. Wave that gun in the air like you just don't care. Hey, thanks for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment. I recommend checking out the playlists that will pop up. Stream shenanigans if you want to see some really priceless top quality comedy within Water Tanks, and learn Water Tanks if you're interested in more content in this kind of style. Thank you very much for watching and have a nice day.
Master of variety, creator of the classiest society, and nothing can beat him but the Tiger P, he's always delivering. That is no Dystonia, his hands are calm. That is wargaming shivering, strong like a Range Rover, hot like a flamethrower. He'll beat your chieftain in the talk, game over. Raping games and KV trains.